And police admit that they did this. It's not just, and they have video. They would go up in the cherry thing and they couldn't get people down. So they would take like scissors or whatever, and they were getting close to the people in the trees and cutting their pants so they could pepper spray their bare skin. And like some of them, they were spraying like literally into their groin area. They were going up there and cutting their pant legs off to spray them.
Wow.
They were not playing around after Warner. Warner Creek really escalated everything. Then when they got everyone down, they hosed them off with fire truck hoses, which there's video of.
Ow. Nope, painful.
Then they took them to the hospital and then to jail. Shit escalated even more quickly. So here are a few, and I mean on the ELF side. So here are a few of the notable arsons carried out by the ELF. In July 1997, members of ELF read some articles about this place that basically they rounded up wild horses and they would send them to a slaughterhouse at the Viande Richelieu. I
don't know about that one.
This meat packing. So the meat packing plant. So this had actually been going on for 10 years, them getting wild horses and sending them to this meatpacking plant. And I didn't see why. I'm guessing to get them off the land. I don't know. It seems insane.
Yeah, because they're not going to eat horses.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
Protesters had been active almost the whole time, the 10 years that they had been doing this. So on July 21st, 1997, ELF said enough. 4 members went in during the night and burned the facility to the ground.
Ugh.
ELF continued to expand and grow after this. They burned down a logging company headquarters in Oregon. They burned down SUVs at dealerships. They wrote into a local paper saying, quote, "Let this be a lesson to all greedy multinational corporations who don't respect their ecosystems." So I think that's why they kept, because I get like attacking the logging company headquarters, but they just kept going to car dealerships and burning SUVs. But it's obviously because I think SUVs are like gas guzzlers and bad for the environment.
Yeah, but I feel like it almost comes at this point where I can see why they started calling them eco-terrorists, because now they're just kind of going after anyone they disagree with.
Yeah. Well, and how are you causing more damage and harm by lighting all these fucking fires?
Yeah, that's also very dangerous.
Then on October 19th, 1998, they heard that the famous ski resort in Vail, Colorado was going to expand into once protected forest. So they snuck in at night, planted fire bombs, and burned down part of Vail, causing $12 million in damages.
No.
Again, they took credit and they released a lovely video, a spokesperson claiming responsibility, which is so strange.
Yeah.
But I also get from their perspective and their motivation, if they're burning it, if they didn't take responsibility and get the name ELF out there, who knows if police would have connected them all. So I think they took responsibility to be like, yeah, it's us burning it down to send a message. Because how is a message sent if no one knows you burned it down?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if they're not doing it because they enjoy arson, like some people do, they're doing it to prove a point. So they need to know who's proven that point.
Yeah. Then on November 30th, 1999, in Seattle, there was a giant protest. So if you Google this on your own, if you want to know more, this is like giant news in itself. Like you could write a whole essay just on this. I'm obviously not going to. There's a protest in Seattle against WTO, the World Trade Organization. I thought I was going to burp. Ooh, no. Nope. Okay.
Come on out, little guy. All right. We'll see you later. Oh!
Tastes like orange juice. The World Trade Organization, which is what it sounds. It's an organization that deals with international trade. The protest had been planned for months, but police were also prepared, ready with tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets, which it didn't take them long to use.
I thought you were going to say rubber bands. I don't know why. Just like they got them slingshots ready.
No, rubber bullets, which are way worse.
That's horrible.
So the protest got ugly pretty fast. Police were already expecting it with everything going on, like the Washington, Oregon area. Then members of ELF showed up dressed all in black. Like you could only see their eyes. They had like black bandanas wrapped around, black hats. All hell broke loose. They started damaging anything, getting protesters more riled up. They were smashing windows of storefronts, knocking down signs. There's videos like, the newspaper things you put your quarter in that probably don't exist anymore. They were knocking those down. Payphones. You guys don't know what payphones are, but they were knocking those down.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They were knocked down.
Anything. And we've all seen protests on TV, like on the news. That's what this was. It went insane.
Wow.
The street was destroyed. 157 people were ultimately arrested, but then released for lack of evidence.
I think the evidence, they could be like, look at that payphone. Like, it's knocked down.
Look at that payphone.
Look at those windows are broken.
We don't need payphones anymore anyways.
Yeah,
Thank you for knocking it down. Back in Eugene, ELF was looking for more companies to target. And then the documentary, this isn't funny, but it is. Members of ELF who took part in the documentary said that they would actually hang out by the train tracks and watch the Eugene train go by. And when they saw like the cart full of trees or lumber, they'd be like, that bitch provided a lot of trees. We're going to target them.
They're like, that logo, write it down. Are you getting it? Put it in your notes.
So they next targeted Superior Lumber Company, who they got from the train. They did their normal process, surveillance in the days before, planted firebombs at night when no one was there and burned it down. They completely destroyed this lumber company and they're like, everything inside was melted. It wasn't like the office building, but keyboards, like everything was just melted. And this was really sad because they had a lot of people who worked at the company like talking and they were saying like they were terrified. Their kids were terrified. And this does make it sound like terrorism. They got extra cameras, like surveillance cameras for their homes. And they were, because, you know, at least the ELF knew that they were only targeting abandoned buildings, right? And the members knew that they were putting in all this work and surveillance to not harm a person, but the people's whose buildings you're attacking don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know that you're doing everything in your power to avoid harming people.
Right. And of course, the next step would be people, or like maybe you think they don't give a shit if someone's there.
Or maybe you burn their home down while they're not there, but maybe their pet's in it. Like, you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these people were terrified, which I can't imagine. Then the ELF sent a letter claiming responsibility. And it was around this time they were labeled eco-terrorists by the government, and like eco-terrorist was all over the news. Like eco-terror, they showed just news clip after news clip that was like eco-terrorism. What is it? Eco-terrorists. Like, that word was thrown around a lot. Some members started to question if they'd gone too far, but others were like, do more, we haven't done enough.
Yeah.
On November 27th, 2000, ELF burned down the Legend Ridge mansion in Colorado. And now they're just fucking burning down anything that's like a giant mansion just because they think it's irresponsible.
Yeah, I have some problems with that.
Right. Then they sent a letter to Boulder Weekly, obviously a newspaper, that said, Viva la Revolution. Damages this time totaled $2.5 million. In March 2001, they torched 30 SUVs at a dealership in Oregon. Then in May 2001, ELF carried out 2 attacks at once, which was a first. So they planned an attack on the University of Washington, where a scientist was doing genetic research on trees with grant funding from the timber industry. And yes, that was their only motivation for burning down the University of Washington.
And
that
seems like a good thing.
And at the Jefferson Poplar Tree Farm in Clatskanie, Oregon, Clatskanie, a place Sarah's never heard of. Clatskanie, Oregon.
That's probably right.
Where they heard that genetic modification was being done to trees for paper production.
It might be Clatskanie. That look like
bless
that.
You. I don't know. But neither went well. The fire at University of Washington spread too fast. Their intent was just to burn down the scientist's office, but they ended up burning down an entire library as well.
Oh.
I can hear Megan's heart breaking from here.
Also, that's all made out of trees.
Wasting it. And after the Jefferson Tree Farm attack, they found out that their information was bad. It was old. The new owners were not modifying trees. So this attack was for nothing. I mean,
they were still looking at the trains in Eugene. So by the time they got...
I mean, they shouldn't have attacked anyways, but now they're just attacking people for fucking whatever.
Well, and they're also obviously not doing their research well enough. Like, get someone to call the organization. Like, it's not that hard.
Oh, and at the farm, they spray painted ELF on one side of a shed. And on the other side, quote, you cannot change what is wild on the other side. So they're basically saying, like, don't modify trees. You can't change what is wild.
Okay.
At this point, the Eugene police had like a straight up war room. And that was like a sign on the door that they showed. They had a war room and a full team to investigate. But for years, 0 leads. They had no idea who was doing this.
They had video. Guess you don't know their names.
Not of the arsons.
Oh, yeah. Just of people in the group.
Yeah. They didn't have video of people in the group.
I thought you said they were like sending videos being like, we did this.
Oh, yeah. But like a random spokesperson. But, yeah. Not anyone that they could track or anyone who even took part. It was always like a different person.
Yeah.
On January 1st, 2003, another car dealership was attacked. Then in August, a condo in San Diego, like a giant condo building, was burnt down. And they left a banner that read, quote, if you build it, we will burn it. If you build it, we will burn it. The ELFs, the elves, are mad. The damages totaled $20 million. This was their biggest.
You are being a terrorist. You are causing terror.
Right. Are you going to burn down every office building that exists?
Yeah,
because
it's scary.
Is big. 3 weeks later, they targeted SUVs again, this time in LA.
They really hate SUVs.
Damaging $3.5 million in property. Then condos in San Diego again. This time spray painting, quote, I love pollution everywhere at the scene. $450,000 in damages.
Your mom in eco speak.
Your mom. I love pollution.
Yeah. Kick me.
It reminds me of in Step Brothers when he writes on the back of his shirt, I love crystal meth. I love pollution. In 2006, still with no leads, the FBI reported that there were over 1,200 criminal incidences committed by the ELF. Soon after, the ELF burnt down a $3 million home in Washington, and they left a note saying, quote, built green? Nope, black. McMansions and RCDs are not green. And RCDs are rural cluster development, so like giant condos and stuff.
You can't burn down people's homes.
Right. And side note, Dan McGowan, who I talked about, he's out of the game by now and living back in New York.
He's like, I'm bored. See ya.
In 2008, they burned down another mansion and left that exact same message. So police back in Eugene still have no leads, and they do something kind of amazing. They decide to look at it one arson at a time and take a cold case approach.
Oh.
So they start looking at a truck center arson, one clue at a time. Eventually, this leads them to Jake Ferguson, who I mentioned at the beginning. It leads them to him because they start looking through other records. And on the same night that this car dealership was hit, Jake Ferguson was arrested for and accused of stealing a truck that exact same night. And he was well known in like the eco-protest community. And then they dug into him. His girlfriend had been arrested near another arson a few weeks later. So police think that they're involved. So they start questioning Jake's friends. They start following him everywhere. Like he becomes super paranoid. Like he's on camera. But so they finally bring him in for questioning. But they actually start his questioning talking about, so they know he's a heroin addict. So they're basically like, dude, bro, we know you do heroin. We know you're like, we could put you in jail for that. You know, like we're going to put you away for drugs. And then they actually bluff and please say that they didn't really, there's a cop on the documentary who's like, could we have put him away then? No. But they're literally like, oh, also, we know that you're part of the ELF and we know that you took part in all the arsons. You're going to go to prison for the rest of your life if you don't cooperate. And then one cop talks about how he told him like, listen, dude, do you want to hold your son's hand and watch him grow up, or do you want to see him behind glass for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
So they offer Jake a deal and they say, confess, give up the others, and you'll do no jail time or go to jail for the rest of your life. And like, it's all a bluff. They have nothing at this point, just literally
but they're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes good and sometimes bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes Jake 20 minutes to take the deal.
Oh.
So police eventually put him in a wire. They want him to go visit his old friends, including Dan in New York, and talk about the good old days. He gets 14 of them to confess, talking about what they're doing.
Man,
I'm very burpy.
Yeah.
While awaiting trial, all but 3 eventually, the police offer all of them a deal. They're basically not no jail time like Jake, but they're like, you'll do a lot less time if you rat other people out or if you testify against each other to make the cases stronger. All but 3 of them take the deals, including Dan. Dan will, and he's very outspoken in this documentary. Like he holds his inner beliefs to his core. He will not rat anyone out. Like he's like, I'll go to jail for the rest of my life. Like I'm prepared.
Some people do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So all but 3. Daniel McGowan refused, but eventually he takes a deal that basically saying, okay, I'll plead guilty to arson, but I'm not going to testify against anyone else. Then they were doing this to avoid like a long trial. But there's still the question, is it terrorism? And what I didn't know is that's up to the judge. So basically, he pleads guilty and then he goes in for sentencing, but there's essentially like a terrorism qualification that can be added to your sentence. And what that essentially meant for him was if he just pleaded guilty to arson, he would just go to like a normal prison, like Rikers or whatever is in New York. If the judge decided that they were in fact terrorists, then he would go to the fucking lockdown, like prisons made only for terrorists that we hear about, So at sentencing, the judge did add the terrorism qualification, meaning Dan would go to a specific prison built to hold terrorists. he would be recorded as a successful terrorism prosecution for the United States of America, and he would be branded a terrorist against the United